This is the Nobel Podcast, where we talk about how to optimize your technology, life, and mind. We're joined by special operations veterans, entrepreneurs, investors, and others who have overcome difficulty to make it to the top of their craft by staying in the fight. Welcome to the Nobel Podcast. We have Jon Norton, former 10th Mountain and Army Ranger, founded Rope Safe USA, and currently a vice president at Zero Eyes, doing gun protection, keeping people safe. Jon, welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Sam. Rob.
Let's start from the very beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Durham, Connecticut, about a population of 6,000, and graduating class about 90 kids strong, where I think I was probably 89th out of 90 in the class. Academics not being my strong suit at the time.
What do you do for fun growing up in a place like that?
So we're out in the burbs. There's a lot of bonfires, sneaking off into the woods, drinking, and just causing all sorts of mischief.
There's a commonality with a lot of guys who end up, doing what you did in the military of that kind of more backwoods childhood, a little more free reign, a little more free range. Do you think that kind of impacted your desire to get into the military?
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I did watch G.I. Joe growing up as a kid and skip school for it. And yeah, free range. I was a feral kid running around with very little parental supervision, if any at all, with my brother and my two sisters. So we pretty much did what we wanted when we wanted, which now as a parent reflecting back on that, I raised my kids a little bit differently than I was raised. But yeah, and certainly the autonomy, which is something that I probably loved the most as a kid.
What about getting in trouble? Did you and your brothers and sisters get into quite a bit of trouble?
Yes. So I wouldn't say of the serious kind, but we're in high school when we would have parties at my friend's house, and we'd skip school and just do kind of mischievous things. But yeah, I think the worst trouble that I got in was getting arrested for underage drinking at 17 years old.
There we go. Yeah, same story. Yeah.
How did you get caught? Why did you get caught?
Good question. Because there were 3 other incidents beforehand where I did not get caught. Where the one where I didn't get caught and then where I did get caught was we were on a mountaintop with one access road, and we actually had comms back down. There's a guy sitting at at bottom of the hill with a two-way radio, and naturally he abandoned his post. He violated General Order Number 1. And sure enough, we see these lights coming up they're like, who's that? Who's coming up? And next thing you know, it's the sirens go off, and the cops get out of the car. And next thing you know, there's probably about 30, 40 of us around the fire, just scatter like cockroaches, turning on the lights. But we were on a mountaintop. And so I remember taking off and running through the pitch black, just running through the woods.
So that's why you wanted to become a ranger.
And that's why. That's why. And doing the Heisman against trees. And then I ended up, it's maybe why I'm a decent runner, or was anyway, I ran 6 miles to a gas station in the middle of the night, was lost as shit in the woods for a while, which is kind of interesting. But then went to a payphone, called a friend of mine at the time, and she came and picked me up and brought us to my friend's house. So
you didn't get arrested that time?
That time.
Okay.
The time that I did get arrested, house party, actually one of my best friend to this day, actually got a phone call that said, hey man, there's like 4 or 5 cop cars like passing, the convenience store in town, like the one convenience store in town. And so this cat, instead of telling everybody, what does he do? He hides underneath a bed and chooses not to sound the alarms. But I was in the garage, and the garage doors were shut. And then, we're just, we're doing what we're doing. And next thing you know, the garage door just wheels right open, and it's police, with their lights, and I'm there. And so, I mean, I contemplated jumping out the window. That wouldn't have had a good outcome.
I also grew up in Connecticut.
Yes.
And I want to get into some of these stories, and we'll go on a little tangent about house parties or whatever at that time. But we used to go to the beach and we would run away. And basically, as long as you didn't get the cars, they didn't chase too much. But I actually got arrested one time. I was in the woods and I wasn't drinking. I was like, I'm not going to run. I'm not drinking. I'm good. They arrested me anyway. And then I fought it in court and it got thrown out. But I was pretty angry about that. I was like, I didn't do anything. And then they were just like, well, you didn't do anything. Because they're just like, you know what? We're arresting everybody.
Rightfully so.
Which wasn't super awesome. So Connecticut police were aggressive to high school kids.
I don't get it.
Oh, yeah.
Were you lucky enough to get a mugshot?
No, I wasn't. But I remember a distinct experience from that. One of my friends was like, well, what gives you the right to come in here at this time? He's like, oh, who do we got? Johnny Cochran here to lawyer type. But no, that argument to go over well. We went down to the courthouse and they nollied it for like 20 or 30 hours of community service, which come to find out when you're going for a secret security clearance, although it may not be on your record, it's on your record. I've come to find out.
So here's a question. And this is for kind of everybody here. Was there ever a legendary high school party that was unlike all other high school parties? Because there's one in my town that was like kind of a myth. Did you ever have that growing up?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about the most legendary high school party and what happened.
So I was fortunate enough to be the host. It was a dress-up party. So the guys had to go out and get nice clothes. So
how old are we talking here?
So this must be senior year. So this is 17, 18 years old. And one of my other buddies was a DJ. And so we had the DJ, we had a fog machine in the basement. We had the strobe lights going and we had the whole basement floor was the dance floor. And at the time, my brother, who's 4 years older than me and looks very, very similar to me. So I had the good fortune of acquiring his driver's license. So
with or without his knowledge?
Certainly without his knowledge. I would go to the package store. I'd go buy cigarettes because I had the golden ticket, the Willy Wonka golden ticket. So filled the bar. There's a bar there. We had it filled with everything under the sun. It went over without a hitch. No cops, no parents. Just dancing and music and drinking. And, everybody was all dressed up and it's still talked about to this day.
You're a hell of a host. So you did it at your own house, which is ballsy. You didn't get caught. You provided the alcohol and you did a themed party.
Themed, yeah.
In high school.
Yeah.
That's fire. That's pretty good right there.
This is upending everything I thought I knew about you, John.
Did you have an epic high school party?
No, it was all woods. It was all bonfires. There's nothing like outrageous.
I went to a prep school in Connecticut, like a Jesuit. So it wasn't super rich, but there was a lot of rich people there. A kid's parents were neighbors with Martha Stewart. They had a lot of money and they were building the house. So he threw a party in a house that was not yet built and did not have plumbing. You could see the problem. He was also a sophomore and every football team from every rival town started coming, even from different states. So this was in Westport, Connecticut. People were like the football team from Rye, New York came and they destroyed the house. They did something like $36,000 worth of damage. That's the number in my head. I want to say they think that 1,000 people showed up over the course of the night. They blocked the whole street. The police couldn't even get there. And he didn't even really get in trouble because he was a rich kid. And they're like, I'm sorry. It's one of those things that, he threw a party that he thought was going to be 20 people that turned into supposedly 1,000. I'm at.
They have a tendency to escalate.
Right. That number was probably 200, but it is what it is. And they started throwing kegs through the walls. It was all drywall. So the money to me, $36,000 when I was 18, might as well have been $1 billion. Now it doesn't sound like, wow, I'm surprised there wasn't more damage.
That's still impressive.
There was like fights that happened because the toilets didn't work and like the football teams fought each other. It was rowdy. He may have called the police on his own party too, just because he's like, he couldn't control it. He certainly had other rich people problems of like cocaine and car accidents at high speed.
Well, that's
that's memorable.
So good high school parties, right?
Yeah.
We're going from the dress-up party, running through the woods 6 miles. What was the earliest memory you had for the military? Was this like a childhood dream?
No, it wasn't. My father served during the Vietnam era in the National Guard. Apparently, he couldn't deploy to Vietnam because his older brother was killed in a car accident. So him and his brother were only able to enlist in the National Guard and stay stateside. But
did they want to go to war?
Oh yeah, my dad wanted to go to war in a big way.
Not many people say that about Vietnam, so that's awesome.
He wanted to go bad.
What's up with your dad?
And I think he just wanted to kill. Yeah, I mean, that was his. I mean, my dad, his 80th birthday was a couple days ago, but yeah, a wild man.
Oh, rock on.
Yeah.
And you chose to throw a party in his house in his absence.
Divorced. He would have. Yeah. How would that have gone? I don't want to imagine. Not well. My stepfather much more on the passive side and permissive side.
Okay, so you had that, and then what got you into the military?
So when I was a senior in high school, I mentioned probably 89th in my class of 90. So less than stellar academic performance during high school. And one of my friends, he enlisted in the National Guard, in the Connecticut Army National Guard. And so at that time, everybody's getting their college letters back. Oh, cool, you're accepted to Yale or UConn or, some of the local state schools or wherever. And my acceptance letters, well, they weren't acceptance letters. They were, try again next year. And so it was at that time, it was a lack of options, dare I say. And so my friend, he joined the Connecticut Army National Guard. That intrigued me a little bit. I talked to my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about joining the military, to which his response was, oh, yeah, that's the right move for you. And so talked to a recruiter and, realize, hey, there's some education benefits here. And this is 1999. So this is pre 9/11. And then I ended up raising my hand and joining the enlisting in the National Guard.
I had no idea this was the case. So you enlisted in the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to college after that, or you actually started as enlisted?
Yeah, I started as enlisted, and then the state waives, tuition. So it's a pretty incredible benefit. During basic training, it instilled that which I lacked, which is a sense of self-discipline, and then the confidence to know that, hey, I can do hard things. So that carried me over into my college because, like I said, I couldn't get accepted into some of the more prestigious universities. So I started at Middlesex Community College. I crushed it because I was able to just, do my work and focus on academics. And I had the discipline to be able to execute.
How much later was that?
I enlisted in the summer of 99 and then went to basic training in October.
You were 18.
99. 18, yep.
So how long were you in the National Guard before you went to school?
So I did ROTC at UConn, and I was a simultaneous member. It was called the SMP program. So I retained my National Guard status, but did all of my drills with UConn ROTC.
So you did the community college, and then that enabled you to get into UConn.
Yep.
As ROTC.
Yeah, that's right. So I was dead set on going to West Point. I went up and toured. I was enchanted by the history of West Point. I drove up there like 4 or 5 times and pretty much like begged the acceptance officer, this major. He's like, dude, what are you doing up here again? Yeah, he pretty much gave me like, hey, this is what you got to do to get accepted at West Point. Your SATs, they're garbage. You got to take this thing called the ACT. And we really need to see some not like Math 99. We need to see some, higher level, type of classes on your resume there. So I did end up getting accepted, but I got accepted into the prep academy. So at the time, I'd already finished 2 years of community college. So that required me to go back to start as a pre-freshman, do a whole year of prep, and then, go through the whole West Point pipeline. And at that point, it was like, no, I'm not doing that.
How soon after boot camp did you go to community college and start that path?
After basic training, boot camp, I wanted to go active duty. The whole idea of going to, I was an engineer, so I wanted to do sapper, which is, kind of like the engineer's version of ranger school, go to sapper school. I didn't listen to my dad much. He said, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do, which I thought was always pretty good about my dad. But you have the opportunity right in front of you. If you go on active duty, it's going to be certainly more difficult to use your benefits and go get your education. Because my dad, he could barely read. He dropped out in 9th grade. So education was really, really important for him. Go get your degree, and then, then you can make, a decision.
I mean, that's scrappy as fuck. I didn't know this. So like you literally enlisted National Guard. Why did they take you into ROTC if your grades are that bad and you're an enlisted guy in the National Guard? There must have been something impressive there that you're discounting.
I was performed pretty well in basic training. I really, really loved it. So I got it to a leadership role. It's called a platoon guide. And your leadership role, right? You're taking, you're getting accountability, you're marching people and stuff. And I did that for a while and really, really fell in love with the idea of leadership. It's like, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this professionally. The big takeaway, I worked my ass off at community college and ended up getting an academic scholarship to UConn, and then subsequently accepted into the ROTC program.
Oh, so you did college first without being admitted to ROTC. What did you do, like a year at UConn and then get it?
Two at Middlesex. So I got my associates from Middlesex. And then in my second year at Middlesex, I applied to UConn ROTC while I was thinking of other options for, because West Point was just not, that was not it for me at the time. And ended up getting accepted to UConn.
That's impressive.
He still got into the military academy prep school too, which probably a couple hundred people get to go there.
From what I understand, it's easier, if kids are coming out of high school and applying directly to West Point, the acceptance rate is stupidly low. It's the same with all the other military academies. But those who go and do a year academically somewhere else and then apply back, it's a much higher acceptance rate, what I've come to find.
How was your experience with ROTC? Would you recommend it for people who are thinking about potentially doing ROTC?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of paths to get a commission. Officer candidate school for already enlisted. For me, it worked out because I already finished 2 years of community college. So the ROTC program enabled me to pick up as a junior and still go through the last 2 years because I was already enlisted. So I didn't have to go through the whole 4-year ROTC pipeline. So that's the pros. And then there's other benefits, education benefits by going to ROTC. And then you get a little taste of the college life, which you don't necessarily get as a military academy, but yeah, you still go through that ROTC pipeline.
So you got to go active duty. What was your first assignment? Was that 10th Mountain?
Yeah, that was at the 10th Mountain Division.
So what year was that?
That was 2004. I graduated 2005, went on to active duty.
So you enlisted pre-war. At this point, we're in a war.
9/11 happened while I was at community college. So second year at Middlesex, and my parents talk about knowing vividly the JFK assassination. Vividly remember the day the towers fell, and actually I get like emotional just thinking about it. But it was at that time where that galvanized, that said, okay, no, I'm not going to West Point because that's another 5 years before I'm going to serve on active duty. UConn's it because that gives me a 2-year path to get on active duty, and I'm going to infantry.
What was it like being on a college campus, having the dichotomy of the discipline? You've tasted some of it, you've excelled at it. UConn's a fun school, right?
Yeah.
They're good at basketball, people know who they are. Mm-hmm. It's fun. It's a part, it's a big school that you can party at. But some of it's serious, and that you're going to go to war at the end of it.
Yeah.
What was putting those together like? Was that good, positive, negative?
Yeah, for me it was positive. I mean, certainly pissed my roommates off when my alarm would go off at 5:30 in the morning to make PT at 6 o'clock or whenever it was. But yeah, you get to go in and out of it, right? You get to put on the uniform and learn the drills, go through the exercises, go do marksmanship, and then you get to take the uniform off and hey, go hit a keg party. It was a good balance because it also was that guardrail. It's kind of like the bumpers and kind of like, hey, stay focused on the end state.
So 10th Mountain, early 2000s, literally the perfect time for combat deployments to Iraq.
Yep.
When did you get to go to Iraq?
Went to IOBC, Infantry Officer Basic School, and down at Fort Benning, Georgia, which the pipeline for an infantry officer is that you go to IOBC, which is about 4 months, and then you go to airborne school, and then you go to ranger school, or some combination of that. So did that. Went to IOBC. Chose to go to ranger school first rather than getting my airborne wings, which is the best decision for if anybody's going that pipeline. Go as a leg ranger.
Why? Elaborate on that.
Because they're it's not terribly often, but you jump out of a plane, shit goes sideways sometimes. You might break a leg or miss a landing, you get injured. So it just increases ever slightly your probability of not getting through.
Rub the cadre the wrong way. For some reason, that seems pretty easy.
It is. And plus, when you're a leg ranger, everybody's doing their old pre-jump and all that other bullshit. And then
so a leg is someone who doesn't jump out of planes.
The leg is the leg ranger. And you're identified and called out for it, but who cares? I get my little MRE and I'm bussing down to Florida while your asses are sitting in a C-130, miserable, jumping onto an airfield, and then I'm just sleeping on a bus.
You end up going back to jump school later?
Right after Ranger School.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You just reversed it. Okay, so you did that. Well, actually, let's pause there. How was Ranger School?
So it's one of those things that if you show up to your first battalion as a second lieutenant, the first thing that your battalion commander does, you walk into his office, he stands up and he just does this, which is peering over and making sure that you have a Ranger tab. And so in my mind, that was not an option. Like, quitting is not an option here. It was miserable. It's an experience that I would probably never want to repeat ever again.
What is the pass rate? Like, what percent roughly?
I went back and taught afterwards, so I know this. So you can recycle in Ranger School. You can go back. If you don't get patrol goes, you're put in a leadership role. You get a go or a no-go. If you get 2 no-goes, sometimes you get a third attempt. And these are like squad leader, team leader, platoon sergeant, weapons, squad leader roles. Then you recycle and you do that phase all over again. But the first time pass rate, somebody can correct me, I'm sure, but I think it's like 20% first time goes. And then I think it's like 30, maybe 35% of everybody who enters the pipeline gets a go.
So that's pretty selective. So out of that 65%, so that 35% includes people who were rolled back and kept getting rolled back till they made it through.
Yep, that's right.
So 65% are basically, they quit.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Wow.
Which heavily are weeded out in the first 2 phases, but which the way it's structured, it's 3 phases, and and then as you get into the mountain phase in Dahlonega, that's when you start doing platoon level operations. But the first phase tends to weed out the vast majority.
So I don't know anything about Ranger School. So like Bud's Hill Week is like the ultimate whittling down of the population.
Mm-hmm.
After that, nobody quits. What is like the culminating event in Ranger School that after which you don't see people quit?
Good question. So the first week, I guess maybe similar to Hell Week, where you just, I shouldn't say that, I don't know, but you're doing, you're sleeping, a couple hours a day, you're getting 2 meals a day. So your caloric restrictions there, your sleep deprivations there, you're doing obstacle courses, the 5-mile runs, the PT tests, and there's all standards that you have to meet. So a lot, guys, will drop out. They drop out on the 5-mile run. There's like an 18-mile road march, I think, that's, that culminates that phase. I remember it vividly because, just exhausted, starving, in the middle of the night, just wobbling down the road. And I think I had like for my MRE, like a Tootsie Roll in my pocket. And so I took out that, and I'm like, paused for a minute, and I took out that Tootsie Roll and I ate it. And it just like resurgence of life, with that, 15 calorie freaking chocolate.
That's one thing that Bud's never fucked with your food. You can eat endless amounts of food. If you were hungry, you asked for it, you got it. I guess that adds another level of like delusion to your physical suffering. Why do they do that? I'm assuming to prepare you for, you guys are black on food in some combat operation.
Yeah, you never know. You may not get a resupply that day for whatever reasons. So yeah, it's another evaluation point. Can you operate? Can you, because Ranger School is a leadership school. The guys from the Ranger Regiment, they're required to go to continue their service in the regiment. Officers, infantry officers, they have to go to Ranger School. It's a pressure test. So they're saying, okay, hey, young second lieutenant, it's 4 a.m. You've had, maybe an hour, if any, of sleep. You're now in charge. Here's your mission. And they give you a sheet of paper. What are your questions? And then it's on you.
How many calories do you think you averaged during that phase?
Well, it comes in and out. So during the field exercises, you get down to 2 MREs per day. I think there's 2 field exercises during the first phase, probably a total of like 8 days with a break in between. And then during those breaks, they do let you go to the chow hall, stuff your face, which inevitably they do, or dumpster dive for food.
Inevitably, they do a dumpster dive for food. What does that mean?
So specifically in Dahlonega, after you get done with it's a 8 or 9 day FTX. And, I remember coming out, I think, probably about 150 pounds, just skeletal. And so then during the refit, you know you got your go or your no go, and then you're crying in the corner. But either way, they give you care packages, and they let you go to the grocery store there on post, and guys just buy, I mean, everything under the sun, ice cream, just gross amount of disgusting food, and you sit there and you stuff as much as you possibly can into your body, and then after the instructors are like, throw it all away. And then that's where the dumpster diving comes in at night.
Okay.
You're looking for that pop, bags of Chips Ahoy cookies or something.
If you, so we'll wrap up Ranger School. I guess one more question. What was the characteristic you saw in the people who did make it through? What was that unifying characteristic, especially since you went back there afterwards?
Yeah. I'll give a Florida phase story, but it's teamwork, right? I mean, if I was a weapons squad leader in Florida, where I was successful, I remember we were doing this nighttime raid on an airfield, and it's a massive platoon level operation, and I'm the weapons squad, so I'm in the support by fire position, and I'm providing, fire support for the rest of the platoon to execute this platoon level operation. And so we're crawling up, and one of my buddies, Parsons, and I still remember this dude to this day. Like, he was a weapon squad leader in Ranger Regiment, and this dude was badass. And so we crawl up, we set up the guns because it was a hasty attack, and I get the fire signal from the platoon leader or whatever, and then next thing I hear, the 240 ka-chunk, nothing, and then the next 240, okay, I got a second one, ka-chunk, nothing. And I'm like, this is it. I'm done. I'm recycling. I got no fire support here. And I'm like, Parsons, get that fucking gun up now. And without even missing a beat, he rips open his Alice pack. He grabs a bottle of CLP. He opens up the bowl, and he just douses the gun. Yeah, cleans it.
Gun oil.
Did some other magic. Got that gun firing, and he runs over to the other gun, does the same thing, and next thing you know, we're talking the guns, singing. And they're singing and they're humming. I'm like, yes, and the shift fire signal comes. And so thank you, Parsons. You are a big reason why I got my Ranger tab.
Did Ranger School, you had an idea of what it was? Did it live up to it?
Yes. You can intellectually understand what it's like to be under those conditions, as you guys know from BUDS and from the SEAL pipeline. But then you physically experience that, and that's the one thing that was, okay, I know what it's like to be on the side of a mountain, humping up, exhausted, tired, hungry in the pouring rain, with my buddy next to me, in the middle of a downpour, spooning each other because it's so cold.
Yeah.
And you really can't prepare for that.
Yeah, you learn the full meaning of nut to butt.
Yeah.
So let's bridge the gap between jump school and combat.
Yeah.
How'd you get there? How'd you get overseas?
Yeah. So go to the 10th Mountain. I got assigned to 2nd Brigade. 2nd Brigade was completing the rotation in Iraq. And I'm a platoon leader at this point. I'm like, no, they're coming home. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be going now. I went to the G1 or personnel officer at the 10th Mountain Division. They're like, what do you want? Like, Second Lieutenant Norton, that's assigned to 2nd Brigade. I'm like, I want to go to combat.
Infantry platoon leader?
Yeah. Yep.
So you started out in engineering. I guess you had to volunteer for infantry at some point?
That was my officers have a branch that they go into, yeah. And, infantry, field artillery, whatever it may be. And so that's what I got selected at ROTC to do was infantry.
Did you want it? Did you want infantry?
Oh, yeah. That was
rock and roll.
This infantry, or, I don't know what else I wanted to do. But so the G1 looks at me. It's like, well, your unit's coming home. But I want to go to Iraq. I want to go to combat. They're like, well, 1st Brigade's there already, so here you go. We'll assign you to 1st Brigade.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, Justice of the Peace wedding with my 2-day, wife, my wife to this date now, out the door I went.
Now, what was your dad's reaction, the wild man who wanted to go to Vietnam? What did he think?
As a father, I mean, he said it kept him up at night, but, super proud. He came to my Ranger School graduation. That was a very special moment, and just, all in. Yeah, he's just like, hey, follow your path, super proud of you. So it was an awesome moment. My dad did not give many compliments, but when they did, they meant a lot.
Let's talk about Iraq. How was it?
So we're in Western Baghdad International Airport.
What year? Sorry.
This would be 2005 to 2006.
That's literally like one of the hottest times to be there.
Yeah. So for the first maybe 1 or 2 months, waiting a platoon leader position, so worked in the staff, did like TIF, like detainees would come in and tactically question them, which is kind of fun. And then a platoon leader role opened up, and so I got the opportunity.
Even to back up one thing, what was it like? You landed at Baghdad International Airport. Do you remember getting off the airplane? To me, it was very vivid.
Mm-hmm.
Describe what that felt like.
The back of the C-130 opens up. Even before that happens, you're doing a corkscrew descent into the airfield, which is not like
so you land faster and harder than you've ever in
my life. Door opens up. It's the middle of the night. You get hit with that stench that of a third world country.
Heat and stench.
And then
what clothes were you wearing?
I was in my ACUs.
Okay, in the SEAL teams we were in civvies, so like we
blew my mind. I landed in Afghanistan with a polo on. It didn't make any sense to me.
Was it safe at the airport?
I think so, but in my own naive mind,
right?
Like we show up here, you get ammunition, and then I'm on the back in the middle of the night. No fucking clue because I didn't deploy with anybody. I was with like another 10 dudes. So I had no fucking clue basically where we were. And then I'm in the back of a truck and I see these jingle trucks coming behind me with like local nationals because they hire local nationals to do a bunch of stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, am I outside the wire already? No, you weren't. Yeah. That was a wild experience.
To me, you land and in your mind, you've built up something. And I asked you whether it lived up to the expectation. A lot of like the combat and stuff doesn't, except for the very few times that it does. And when you get off that plane, you think that you're in the middle of the war. You're like, where's my gun? I need to start like maneuvering. Like, and it's, dude, relax. Like we're going to go find like a bed for you to sleep in. And it's the most disorienting feeling I've ever had in my life. And it was also like 120 degrees. And it was the burn pits. It like burned your nostrils with the burn pits that are there, the heat, the stench, and all of those things. And then people have been there a long time. Like, you want to go to the chow hall? You're like, gotta go kill the enemy. Like, yeah, calm down. You're not going anywhere tonight. We got to get all your stuff.
Yeah, much the same.
It was just literally one of the most disorienting things I've ever had. And no matter what, every deployment that I've been on, it still comes back a teeny tiny bit.
Oh yeah.
You get out of the plane and you're like, am I in it right now? I'm like, no, not yet.
Not yet. Disorienting is a good way to describe it.
So second lieutenant checking in, did you just get a team automatically? How did you get into your deployment?
So did a couple, 1 or 2 months of staff time and did detainee questioning. Platoon leader role opened up, and so was fortunate enough to take a platoon.
So how does that mentorship process work? I'm assuming you relied on your higher enlisted men to kind of guide you a little bit because they've been in country for a while. How did that work?
Oh yeah. So many of whom had been to Afghanistan already, multiple combat deployments, had already, very familiar with the area of operations, the threats, hitched on to, particularly my squad leaders, because the platoon sergeant, they got other responsibilities and they're mentoring them by all means. They are absolutely mentoring you. A lot of the pipeline does prepare you to be able to take over a platoon, but then how do you run a raid? How do you run an ambush? That's where those, hey, Sergeant Gardner, come here. This is my plan. This is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And they're like, yeah, that's awesome, sir. Let's do it. Or, the fuck you thinking, sir? No, we're not going to do that. That's stupid. Getting their feedback on the plan is crucial.
Was there a Sergeant Gardner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That rolled off your tongue super easy.
So memorable.
How long ago was that?
That's 2005. Yeah, 2005.
So that's 20-ish years ago. And like you didn't, because we didn't talk about that, do you think about who that person is?
I love that guy.
He just taught you how to do it.
Wayne Rosebrock. I mean, there's so many that like these guys. I mean, they give you shit as a platoon leader. Like they expect and demand a lot of you. You get no better school of mentorship than being in combat, with your squad leaders who are leading their team leaders and whoever leading their soldiers. Yeah, they put you to the task. They bring it to school because they need you to be successful. And I remember distinctly, like, yeah, that on my first, kicking in a door the first time, and then I'm in the stack, and my squad leader's like, "What the fuck are you doing in the stack? Like, get out of here!" I'm like, "Oh, Roger." And so yeah, he's like, "Your job is here, like on the radio, like." You need to see the bigger picture. You need to be able to communicate if we need air support, if we need medevac, if we need to shift fires. Like, that's where you belong. Like, you are not in the stack. Get the fuck out of here.
That's like one of the most significant differences I've seen in the civilian versus military world is you can say to your supervisor, "What the fuck are you doing, sir?"
Oh, yeah.
And like, because it's life or death. And you have to have the humility and control over your ego to take that. If some people don't, and they just suck.
Oh, yeah.
But like most of them do, and they can roll with those punches. That is such a powerful thing. I wish I saw it every day in business.
You don't even necessarily see it in other militaries. So I think, watching conflicts overseas where officers get killed, they're in charge of everything and nobody makes a choice. And when you know that like your enlisted community can just go and do the whole thing, and maybe they don't see the whole picture, but you were taught from day one, in the absence of leadership, I will take charge and lead.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that there's something really unbelievably powerful about it. And maybe there's some bad to it too. There's like arrogance, and you don't have to tell every boss to go fuck themselves, and they kind of do. But there's a power in our military, and it's at the lowest level that Sergeant Gardner's there, and he's going to fucking take care of shit.
He will take care of shit.
If people get hurt, Sergeant Gardner's going to keep going.
If I eat it that day, like, Sergeant Gardner's on the radio, like he's now the platoon leader, right? And that's heavily emphasized in Ranger School, like what happens when the leader goes down. And if he goes down, the team leader, talk about the most lethal weapon system is a United States Army infantry fire team, and that team leader behind that, they can pick up the radio and they can start calling for fire. They can start calling in medevac. They can start, continue the mission.
That's a machine. It's a machine. All right, so you're over there. You're trying to get in the stack. You got your little reminder. You're an officer. You're an O. You're the commander. Give me an idea, like the typical mission set you were doing on that deployment.
Yeah, during that particular deployment, a lot of like HVT search. So you get here's your BOLO list. Here's everybody that you're looking for. Here's your assigned geographic area. Typical workflow per se is you go and give your battalion commander the mission brief, like all the platoon leaders did. And then you go out and you're just hitting your basic planning key points, and then you go out for if it's a patrol for IED emplacement, try to find IED emplacement, or if you're going to do a raid, then you go execute the raid, and then you come back into the wire and you go into your little chew and you sleep a little bit, and then you get your next mission, and it's very autonomous at the platoon leader level.
9 seasons of Friends.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Do you have any like the most memorable mission on that first deployment?
Yeah. It was a raid, battalion level air assault raid across the Euphrates to a little town. I'm sure my battalion commander would know specifically the name of the town, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing more exhilarating than jumping onto the back of a Black Hawk, flying nap of the earth over Baghdad to land, and then just crush a town. That was a very memorable experience. We had other platoons had some contact. We flew in, we landed. We saw some dudes scatter on the top of the house, and then everything you plan for, it's like, okay, maybe a little variation because we hit the wrong, not the exact LZ that we were on. Okay, weapon squad here, boom, the principles, the basics. Weapon squad, support by fire, assault team, go. And they're just like a well-oiled machine.
All right, so that's your first deployment. You did multiple deployments, right?
Yeah, 2 deployments. Yep.
What happened between your first and second?
Yeah, I went back. Then you go through the whole refit. You go to Fort Polk, Louisiana. You go do platoon and battalion level exercises in preparation for the second deployment. Just before it, I served my time. That's the tough part. I loved being a platoon leader. But the next wave is coming right behind you. So moved into that executive officer role, and which is more logistics. So you're working on making sure beans and bullets and maintenance is done. So I was, and then we deployed forward to Kirkuk, Iraq.
What was the second time like preceding it? So first time stepping off the C-130, shock, stench, heat. Second time, were you a bit wiser, a bit older, or still like a novel experience?
Always a bit novel, but you have, I mean, you've experienced that. You know that door's going to open and it's going to be terrible. It's
Still hits you hard.
It still hits you hard.
I think it hits you hard.
It does. It definitely does. But you just,
Connecticut.
yeah. But the second deployment, much different. At that time, General Petraeus, came in and, now they're, we're doing, more, not the same in support operations, but we're building up the Iraqi National Army and the police in Kirkuk.
The
counterinsurgency. Yeah. The 5 lines of operations. So, we're, yes, we had guys in platoons going out there doing direct action, but the heavy preface is training the Iraqi Army and police force.
Any significant moments on that deployment you want to dig into?
Yes, but raid where we are not doing the raid, where it's the police that we're doing the raid, and fire control is not quite their strong suit. And so we went around this target, and they set up, obviously, we do support by fire, assault, shift fire. Yeah, they circle the perimeter.
They being Iraqi police?
The Iraqi police at this time, and they start firing inwards without contact. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
It's a Polish ambush.
Yeah, and it's
so they surround a house and just start blasting.
That may be a stretch, but the structure of it.
It appeared to you because you couldn't see what was going on.
You're looking at it like, okay, I think I'm going to tuck away here in my truck because I'm not sure they have command of fire control right now.
All right, rock and roll. So the 2 deployments to Iraq. When did you know you were going to transition out of the military?
So a little intermediate step. I did want to go be a Green Beret. I wanted to go, and I got selected to go to selection for to go into that pipeline. At that time, my wife and I were married 4 years. Had spent all of that second deployment was 16 months, which is a long time. We get back home and I'm training. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing land nav. I'm rocking. I'm getting ready to go. She sits me down. She's like, I'm not going to get in the way of your career ambitions, but if you go to selection, we're done. And so I'll let that sink in for a minute. And, we went, instead of doing that, I went down to the captain's career course.
What is that?
You're training in infantry officer basic course is to train guys to become platoon leader. The captain's career course is to train, the platoon leaders who are now captains to then go on and take company command and staff positions.
So you thought you were going to stay in even though you weren't going to become a Green Beret?
Yeah. Didn't quite know at that point in time what the next steps were, but I know me, my wife, we needed to get off the year on, year off, 8 months on, 6 months, whatever pipeline. And so that's when did the captain's career course and then went up to be an instructor at 5th Ranger Training Battalion in Dahlonega, Georgia.
Do you start planning your next steps post-military while you were there?
I did, yeah. At 5th RTB, I did start to, which is great because it's very, very hard to do when you're coming right off deployment. You get your block leave, and then hey, you're at terminal leave, and then hey, welcome to the civilian world. So it was good opportunity to help ease the transition.
You've had an awesome transition. We'll get into it, but before we do, like, what if you could say what was the best and then the worst aspect of the military as a whole? And if you'd recommend someone who are interested in joining the Army, what would you say?
Yeah. The best part about the military for me personally, for my own experience, is again that operational experience that you get and how to take a complex problem, work as a team, and then execute with not analysis paralysis. Like you just got to get after it. So learning how to work with people effectively. And, the worst part, the worst part about it is that at times, there's just, there's some amazing shit that we do, but there's periods of just straight up suck and boredom. All in all, for me, it was the absolute, right experience. I wouldn't change a thing.
Was there a bad day that was worse than all
There is a bad day. There is a bad day. We had some great men that are no longer with us. And you hear the calls over the radio, the 9-line medevac, I'm in a whole different sector, you know what I mean? And you hear that call, that 9-line come in, and you're like, oh. So those, they're unfortunately, they're too many of those, and they hit hard, they hit home. Sergeant Pickett, one of my squad leaders, incredible human being. He sacrificed his life for others, and yeah, those are tough days.
So, like on that note, what would you say to someone interested in joining?
Make the decision that's right for you. If the military is that path, or law enforcement, or first responder, or just giving back to your community in whatever way, that you got to make the decision that's right for you. It's got to be yours. If somebody tells you to do it and it doesn't feel right, it's got to be your decision.
Here's a question. I think I know the answer, but elaborate on it. Did you get more than you gave, or did you take more or give more, in your opinion, after it?
After the military?
Yeah. Do you think that you gave more than you got, or did you get more than you gave?
That's a hard question. I almost think about it as that,
because there's a huge sacrifice, and it changes your life. And you're like, I gave everything away and I spent everything I had, but did you receive more?
Without question. I mean, I think you come out, and then as you're transitioning out of the military, I came to quickly realize that I can be successful in the civilian workforce. I have built up a repertoire of skills, and I'm able to apply those. And it doesn't really matter what the challenge is. Like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to knock this down. And that mentality, that mindset, like, hard problem. Okay, let's figure it out and execute.
Let's jump into post-military. So did you go straight into founding your company?
No, I actually spent a couple years, maybe one or two too many, as a project manager at Eversource Energy, which does have some value, because learning project management, there's value in that. You can get project management professional certification, but it was just this, like, I'm not really good in the political landscape per se, navigating the corporate culture and the politics of it, and how to get things done, and who you got to appease, who you don't, who you got to keep on your radar screen.
Probably why I like you.
I'm not good at that. I just, like, some people are. Some people are really great at navigating that environment. I am not. I'm terrible at it. And then one of my friends, whom I'm very close to with this day, suggested, hey, what about sales? Like, if you thought about sales, like, you're miserable over here. I'm soul sucking, getting out of work, bed every day. I'm like, I hate this. Sales. No, no way. I'm not that. No. He's like, dude, just think about it. There's a role opening up. Just think about it. And so I went to talk to people that I had in my life. I'm fortunate to have some really incredible people in my life, many whom are very successful sales professionals and leaders themselves. And I just canvassed them. I'm like, hey man, asked them all a series of the same questions to try to get some data points. And the overwhelming theme was much different from what I had thought.
Can you dig into what it was about sales? Like, especially coming from the military, the idea of sales, it's almost like a dirty word. Can you explain why your immediate revulsion to the idea of doing sales?
Yeah, I mean, the archetype of the used car slick salesman comes to mind, just trying to get this next sale, get a buck, always be closing, right? And I came to learn that is not what a sales professional is at all. And I had to break that perception.
So what sold you? What did you hear about it from when you canvassed the environment? What did they say that really hooked you?
Things like, well, you're a strategic advisor to your clients. You're not just trying to sell them. You have to, kind of validate that this is the right solution for them. You have to solve a problem that they are having. By the way, you have high integrity, trustworthy. So those character, hardworking, able to formulate a territory game plan on how you're going to grow the business in your particular territory, and it's all on you. Like, it's quantitative. It is on you, and those characteristics were really appealing.
So was there a period in your Army career that you think educated of why you're able to sell and why you enjoy that and that process and trustworthiness? Is there any one point, like, you were an instructor for a while? Do you think that teaching people, there's overlap with teaching and selling? Do you think it's just a leader? Do you think it's being a platoon leader? Is there any one point from the Army that educated why sales clicks with you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, when you're trying to get resources to run an operation, whether it be, you need to get air support or dogs or EOD. It doesn't matter. They're not under your control. So you have to go, I don't want to say lobby, but you have to go kind of, learn how to, kind of work with people to be able to, understand their priorities and be able to get the resources that you need to be successful. And then the teaching component, that comes into play, especially with, building in something new, going from 0 to 1 and educating people that have, no idea what it is that you do and why it matters, or what product you're selling, or why that matters to them. So to be able to in the teaching element, to be able to educate people about what you do, which is what I, really, really love about sales.
I think we should do a different episode just on sales with you, because knowing firsthand experience, we can go deep down that rabbit hole and strategy, the way you get it done, the successes you've had, the failures. That would be a good episode. So let's put that aside for now. Let's cover real quick the company, and then we'll do some personal questions around that just for time's sake.
Yep.
So tell me about the company you founded and any major lessons learned that might apply to other people founding companies right now.
Yeah. So it's RopeSafe USA is the company. The product, it's a load-bearing rope protector and anchor strap that protects a high angle or life safety ropes from abrasion or failure on a sharp surface, but it's also multi-use too. So the way I thought about, the product development process is this is interesting, but I don't know if there's any value here. So like a young platoon leader, I reached out to and sent early minimum viable products to, experts. And those are non-commissioned officers at 5th RTB, 19th Special Forces Group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group in Virginia, the FDNY, NYPD, those who live it and breathe it every day, and say, what do you like about this? What do you hate about this? How can I make this better? What value do you see? Would you buy this? And that culmination for me, was that, hey, that like a land nav course, the next step's there's something here that's worth exploring, but I need to make these changes to make this product fit that particular use case, whether it be a firefighter who's doing a high angle rope rescue mission, or a Navy SEAL, or an Army Ranger that's doing a tactical rope insertion, very different use case. And so that was invaluable. So don't think you have the solution, go out to the market. It can be an ugly problem. My first variants of RopeSafe are absolutely ugly, terrible, but you can do it on the cheap, but you really need that feedback loop to continue to develop the product or kill it. Sometimes they may say, dude, your baby's ugly. I don't have a use for this. You gotta, sometimes that's just the reality.
So that's a good one. Do your market research, make sure there's something real there before you commit to it. What other lesson learned would you have? Because you built the company, you have it autopiloted, and you're doing this on top of it. So that is, you did the full life cycle of a company. Yep. What's another one or two things you'd give to someone in an entrepreneurial role?
Yeah. Get your education. I'm fortunate enough to have gone to the Entrepreneurial Boot Camp for Veterans program, which is literally teaches you from start to finish how to build a company. And incredible program, incredible mentorship, contacts that I still take in contact to this day. Get educated, but also pay attention. Your customer, that customer feedback loop is so critical, and find the best path to market for RopeSafe. That was through a distributor channel.
How did you get the first customers? You just labeled off, if you said in the United States of America, people who do dangerous stuff with ropes, who need to protect the ropes from getting cut, you literally named the most critical people that exist in it, like FDNY, NYPD, Tier 1 special ops groups. How did you sell to them? How did they even listen to you?
Yeah, it's having that humility. I'm not a Navy SEAL, but I have this thing here, and I really want your feedback.
How did you even reach out to them to even get a hold of them, to cold have call. The courage, just cold calling?
Not always, but at the end of the day, it is a cold outreach, whether it's an email or a warm introduction through a friend, like it was with Naval Special Warfare Development. I called 5th RTB staff desk. That was the first call I ever made. And I'm like, hey.
So you've got it in there.
I got it in there. Hey, I was here a couple years ago. Who's the NCOIC down at the rope shack? And they're like, Sergeant Davis. Let me connect you to him. Scared shitless on the phone. He's like, yeah, I'm going to, Best Ranger in, a week. Send me what you got. Roger that. Out the door it goes. And then next thing I know, I'm getting these pictures of how he's using it. And then he's telling me all these things like, hey, dude, this is fucking awesome. But you need to do this, this, and this, and you need to make these little, these little variations to it. You're like, okay. Then I go and do that. And I send him another round. He says, we're getting closer, but you still need to do this, this, and this. And then, you just keep iterating.
The first interview we did in person was here in this office, and we weren't in a position to have like a large pipeline or funnel. And I'm like, you got to understand, you're coming on board with nothing, no opportunities to work on from scratch. I'm like, how are you going to do it? And you made the same symbol you just did, the little phone hand signal. He said, pick up the phone and call him. And I'm like, all right, that's the scrappiness right there. Yeah. But you combine it with the sophistication, which is why if we go down that rabbit hole, it'd be a 4-hour episode. So we got to save it for another time.
Totally. Because it's to do a sales
episode. There's so much to talk about there. So let's go to the personal stuff real quick, more fun stuff. What do you do to prime yourself for the day? You've given me a rundown a couple of times before. You got some good stuff. So how do you hit the morning?
Yeah. So I like to bookend the day. So I start with some sort of movement, whether it be just a walk with my dog or a run. Like I went for a run this morning. And after that, I do this weird thing. I just jump into a cold shower. I've been doing it before it was cool, and every single day. It sucks in the wintertime, but I hit a cold shower, and I already have my day, generally mapped out what I'm going to do. So go downstairs, get a cup of coffee, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. And then, it's go time. It's execute.
What is your brain like before that cold shower? They are shockingly psychologically difficult. Are there days where you're like, fuck no, I'm not doing it, and then you end up doing it anyway?
It's like, fuck no, I'm not doing this. This is terrible. This is hard. And I want comfort. And then you're like, no, you don't. Let's do it. Just do it. Every time it sucks. It does not get better. You do it. It feels great.
Okay, so what about workout programs? Do you have a specific program, or you just kind of move?
I just move. Kind of plan it out the night before sometimes, or it's how I feel today. I'm like, I need to go for a run, or I got to walk my dog, and so I go walk the dog, do some breathing exercises and stuff like that. If I'm at a hotel, I'll go hit a bike. Go bike for 45 minutes or whatever. Do some weight training. So. No specific program, but just gotta move. You just gotta move. You gotta keep moving.
Yeah. What about the end of the day? So again, from personal experience, you're one of the best time managers I've ever seen. You got a lot done in a window, and then you're really good at saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
And pivoting.
Yeah.
So what is that pivot point like at the end of your day, and how do you get that done?
If things are done for the day and the kids are clamoring at me, they come down and so, okay, let's go. Let's go hang with the kids for a little bit. And then the kids go to bed. And so that's the time when that, and I only try to keep it very, very brief, maybe 15 minutes at most. I mean, I'm not perfect at this, but I'll go downstairs, and I'm pretty old fashioned. I just have a printout of, a calendar that's blank, and I fill out the blank page. Like and I'm batch activities. Like if I'm going to be reaching out to existing, clients in the funnel, I'm going to be doing that.
Do you have a policy with your smartphone? Is there a period where you put it away and focus on your kids? Like, how do you think about smartphone regulation?
I'm not super great at it, but sometimes I'll just leave it down at my desk, and that's an easy way, because I'll just walk upstairs. If I have the phone in my pocket or my hand, it's going to come out. So if I just leave it down there, I'm probably not going to go down and get it. And so I can spend some quality time with the family. Like I said, imperfect at it, but that's the easy way for me.
Do a little lightning round. 1, 2, 3 books that changed your life.
This one is, I think it's actually really good. It's such a painful academic read, but it's not a read. You have to work the book. It's called The New Business Road Test. And if you are starting a business, I think it's an invaluable resource, because at the end of every chapter, if you're building a product, you've got to answer questions, and they're not easy questions. Like, how do you know you've achieved product market fit? Or who is your ideal, customer profile? And then you're like, well, if I really think about that, who is my ideal customer that I'm targeting? What's the size of the total addressable market? And it goes through this step by step, and it gives great use cases in there. And if you're just reading it to read it, it's going to be of little to no value. Peter Thiel comes to mind, 0 to 1. How you are, because you're building, something from nothing. Then there's the 1 to N crowd, which we see on a daily basis, that are trying to take what you're something that you created that's unique in the market, and they're just trying to do a spin-off of that one to end.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very fitting. So I think that's a pretty interesting book. On the personal side, I mean, recently I read, it's probably not life-changing, but Hemingway, the Old Man and the Sea.
He comes up again and again and again on this podcast.
Yeah.
Old Man and the Sea is an epic read.
Amazing. Couldn't put it down.
What about life-changing movies? 1, 2, 3.
Gosh, I'm like, I'm still like kind of immersed in the kids stuff. Like, I mean, I'm watching Despicable Me, and and they're, you watch them, and they're to watch Despicable Me is absolutely hilarious movie. But trying to think, as a kid, my siblings put me down and had watched Platoon, like old school Vietnam movie, scared the living shit out of me. That was life-changing in a way. I guess couldn't sleep for a couple.
So as a parent, do you ever watch a kid's movie? So like Despicable Me is going to be less so, but is there ever one that catches you and you find it more profound than your kids do? Or like, because they put messaging in there. That's good. Is there ever one that like you catch yourself like almost breaking a tear, being like, oh my God, like this is way better than the kids know. They're like, oh, this is a good movie. It was funny. Do you ever catch yourself in something like that? Because on occasion, some of my kids' stuff, when I read like my kids' books, they have like the lessons are so stupid and obvious in like kids' books, but every now and again it just hits me and like, this is good.
The one that comes to mind, I have a daughter, she's 6, but for the longest time she was on a Moana kick. But you talk about the hero's journey, and in Moana, she's at a point of despair. Like it's and then grandmother comes out of the sea, right? She's like, "You can do it."
I quit and like
keep going,
get up one more time.
Yeah.
Like, it hits me.
I know.
It's funny, like those dumb movies. There's part of them you're like,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And then it comes like, "Hey, honey, you want to watch Moana again?"
I think we can wrap it up there. We'll have you back on again because I think we can go nitty gritty down a different pathway entirely. Super stoked to have you. Thank you, Jon.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's it for this episode. If you want to check out more from the podcast, head to zeroeyes.com/nobel, where you can see show notes, read more about our guests, and suggest guests or topics of your own. Until next time, stay in the fight. Don't ring the bell.